Hi, I'm Dave March, the Spy Guy, and this is my latest book review. This is for a book called The Storm Before the Calm with George Friedman. So right before the election, I had a kind of weird moment where I was got a little introspective on different things that were going on at the time. And I spent this time talking to, or just Glenn Greenwald, who was on the left, because I keep telling everyone who really asks, I'm like right at the tail of the hunt. So Glenn Greenwald resigned from The Intercept over some stuff that was happening there and over media censorship. And that was kind of something of interest to me, especially with cancel culture and other things that are going on. So I'm trying not to do, I'm going to say something here. I don't want to do political reporting or that kind of stuff. I tried that early on. It was dumb. But I do want to have like serious conversations about politics and stuff like that from the educational, informational level from these book review portions. And so that's what happened here. So he quits that because of him being like, they wouldn't publish his piece on, remember Hunter Biden? Remember when that was a thing? Seems so 2 weeks ago, 1 month ago. Now we're on to the next craziness. It's a never-ending story in 2020, eh? Anyways, so I started checking out some left-wing progressive sources who are very critical of the incoming Biden administration and doing a bunch of other stuff there. And I've been looking around at different things. So one of the things I did with my Audible subscription was to get this book behind me here and give it a listen to. And it's actually quite fascinating what he's describing, because it sounds a lot like what's going on. So he wrote this, George Friedman is what's called a geostrategist. I'm sort of in that line myself, more as a hobbyist and then a real one. But like I actually have a board game for a magazine called Visgrad 4. And every writer live long enough to see their speculative fiction turn into alternative history. It was my game is about like Russia invading Poland in the year 2020. Well, I got 3 more weeks for that to happen, so that doesn't look like that's going to happen. Anyway, so he has looked at American history, and he's determined that he says there's 3 giant institutional cycles that happen every 80 years. And then there is another, let me see here, get someone else's review because I don't remember it all. There are 3 institutional cycles which have defined the United States. The 3 examples he has are Revolutionary War, the founding of the United States, the Civil War, and World War II, and 50 years socioeconomic cycles that has been the formation of the industrial class, of baby boomers, and middle classes. So what his thesis is that we are hitting both of these cycles are hitting at the same time in the 2020s, and that's what's leading to the cause of all this unrest. Because he says in the past, every 50 years, America gets to a moment, and it's certainly true other countries have these moments as well, where everyone seems to think it's all going to hell. Everyone is a partisan lunatic. Everyone on the other side is evil, and what we're seeing is the same process happening to the United States again. The best way he says is it starts in the late 60s with the peace movement and the Vietnam War. New technologies came upon, so everyone was watching television and getting their information that way, and it was the first televised war in a way that, say, Korea or other things were not. The peace movement comes up to expose all the bad people in the institutions, and now he's saying we're hitting, and eventually it ends with the Ronald Reagan and supply side economics and all the stuff that happened in the Reagan years that led to where we are now coming out. And he says every single time an institutional cycle ends, when the socioeconomic cycles ends, you see a president who comes in, who looks like who is going to try, looks very much like the epitome of how everyone has been doing things wrong, or to be the epitome of everything bad in the previous cycle. And God, if you watch some of these progressive sources, they're saying all sorts of awful things about Biden. Makes me, I'm like, I know people on the right, and they're not happy, but they're not, these people are like, they are furious at their purported political party. Like, they are like, I'm a political person myself. The fact is that when you get elected, you're supposed to pay off all your constituent groups as part of the coalition. You're supposed to give these guys a seat at the table. A good example is the Republicans back in 2010, when they took back the House, they gave Ron Paul, in reward for all his work in bringing those libertarians to vote for the Republicans, chair of the Finance Committee, and he finally audited the Fed, for which he wanted to do forever. And you see that with going back to Nixon. He had, most of you probably don't know who Pat Buchanan is, but he is a person of the paleo-conservative, there's another word you probably never even heard before, paleo-conservative right in his office. And people say, why do you have that guy around? Because there's a certain constituency that is in the Republican Party that will not vote for me unless he's here. And so I'm going to have Pat Buchanan as one of my chief speechwriters. Also, he's a good speechwriter. But like, just to have when you're forming your government, you're going to pay off all the people who got there. And they are not paying off the people that got them there. They're paying off people who are former Republicans who came back and joined their party. So the word neoconservatism is a group of actually kind of people on the Kennedy Democrat strain who left at the end of the Carter era. They one of them I remember watching is, he says he and a bunch of his young men were like young Turks. I don't like that word because of all the people they killed, but they one of these groups of people that were kind of up and comers in the Democrat Party at the time. And so the vice president of the United States invites them to the White House to have a meeting and meal with Carter. He sits them down, and Mondale spends like an hour schmoozing these guys, just like, don't worry, you're not actually going to join the Republican Party. Everything's fine here, whatever. And then Carter comes in to seal the deal for the last 15 minutes. And after talking to Carter for 15 minutes, the next day they all join the Republican Party. These people are just going home. These are the guys who are pro-war, the people who really ran George W. Bush's years in office. And they're just going back to the party that they belong to. We're seeing a real reorganization of the way things are. The Republican Party is turning into the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is turning into the Republican Party. It's all very weird and very interesting to someone like me. To you who are having to see it and live it and be run by these people, maybe not so much. But he also talks about how a new technology will arise. But I'm going to talk about what his institutional cycle is, that in this redefining role is that the government has to get control of itself and actually figure out what's going on. So his argument is that the main argument at the government level is that the government is not able to respond to things effectively anymore. It's very inefficient and very stupid and doesn't know. That's why you were stuck in 20 years in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. No one can come up with a coherent policy to end the war. They just keep going with it. They keep doing all these empire building odds, even though the vast majority of people don't want them to. They just don't want to have wars forever. And it's kind of a weird dichotomy. So you have all these government institutions, government programs, and to me, I think he's making the mistake. He's just focusing on the government. I think all the institutions we're watching are becoming bad, corrupt, incompetent, unable to do this. We see it in big media. We see it in big media, big Hollywood. It's part of media, but we see it there. We see it in all sorts of other places where the big institutions can't handle things. I saw a guy complaining on a podcast I usually watch, and he's like, "Well, they were talking like, what do you think of this whole Trump News Network that he's going to find?" And he's like, "Oh, well, hey, go right ahead. You can lose $1 billion for 10 years, and then you'll be finally make $1 billion." And it's like, thinking to myself, that's not actually how the news works anymore. You don't need giant offices full of stuff. I didn't hear about this network until after the day of election, Right Side Broadcasting Network. And because suddenly no one wanted to hear, and they're crowdfunded. They have like one or two sponsors who are spending money for them. But so the My Pillow guy basically owns the network, but it's just like volunteers able to operate off of their cell phones and making a little bit of money on YouTube videos and selling and just primarily getting money crowdsourced from a ever-growing membership who can't get the news they want from the big networks. Like, I watched a bunch of the hearings last week in the United States because I'm a junkie, and that's like my crack cocaine. But they were it was just sort of like it was being covered by these little networks that are providing source of news outside that they don't need to have a big building in New York or Atlanta. They don't need to have things. And they're like us. Those of us who are people in my community that are down below, and you should check out their links. They're like us, just building up something new based off of subscriptions. It's a whole new world, and these guerrilla organizations are spontaneously developing and creating new content for a very hungry class of people who are desperate for something else. That's how you got Trump in the first place. He was the only one who would say, he and Bernie are the only two at the time who were saying we need to end the wars, and people want to end the wars. Right? I think if Bernie had been the same Bernie in 2016, in 2020, I think he could have won that. Then again, well, I won't get too much into that. It's just like, so this book here is a great, if you want to understand what's happening in your country today, this is the book you're to read. Okay. He's just kind of, he starts off by laying out the foundations of the country and the civilization, defining terms, and gives you a brief history of the United States for you to, and building up towards these institutional cycles. Then he explains each era as he sees them. And then he applies those eras, the lessons we learned in those eras to the future. So like he said, you get like, he said, in one point of the book, he's like, look, when I told a lot of people people asked me, what do you think when Donald Trump won in 2016? And I started telling them what I thought it was the end of the Reagan era. And people didn't want to hear that because they were so short-term focused. And he's now saying, we're going to be hitting the next institutional era of this, the Biden presidency is not going to fix things. It's only going to apply tools that previously worked back in Reagan's and Clinton's times, and then will fail because they can't, they're trying to use the wrong tools for the current job. And he says that one of the things that we should be looking forward to, and I have seen some inkling of this myself, he said that the big thing of the Reagan era is the development of the microchip in the computer, sort of like before in the World War II, transistors, and that, and the invention of the computer itself. So microchips are just kind of mundane internet things. And of course, the internet really started in the early years of the Reagan administration, right? So we're seeing these technologies are the maturing ones. The ones that we're really going to see that are going to be interesting and good news for a lot of us older people is that biotechnology is really where we're going to see it. And it's not like mutants or super soldiers, but it's just we have an aging population. We don't have enough young people to fill the gap. We're going to have to keep older people more vibrant and productive later years in their life, like they're doing currently in Japan. And that's what our real goal will have to be. And we'll be seeing that And so we're going to be seeing more and more technologies that will, that will make you live longer, but also keep your brain functioning longer. That will be the real number one. So we're going to see Alzheimer's cured and dementia be reduced and all these things, because the old people who have all the money are going to be wanting these things. And that's one of the problems. One of the problems, as he points out, is that in the 70s, a big problem was there was a capital shortage, and that Reagan brought in programs to create capital. Now in 2020s, what we have is too much capital. We don't have anything to do with all this capital. It's crying out for usage somewhere else. So Biden and his guys will be applying the solutions that were designed to fix the problems of the 70s in the today, and they're just going to be the opposite of what is needed. So that's what we're going to be seeing in the next few years. And we're just seeing, he says, this should all, according to him, it'll be all over by 2028. So we got 8 more years of fun times. I think COVID might have accelerated the timetable a little bit. He wrote his book without COVID. I think he wrote it in 2019. It got published in early 2020. So he didn't know about this pandemic, because he gave every indication he thought that Trump would win. And of course, given what was looking at back in February, that seemed to be undeniable. I thought the guy was going to win 40 states. That being said, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's 2020, it's Trump, I saw today someone on a reporter I follow on Twitter said something, and he's like, this is etched in stone. And I'm like, have you been paying attention this year? Anyways, like, share, subscribe, watch this video, give me some hours. Even you put me on mute in the background and just let it roll. I do recommend the book. I know I haven't done any bad reviews lately. I'm going to give it 92 out of an 85. I'll give it 85 out of 100. I'm still going. I want to get content out there more than I want to get my links set up, and I need to get that 8 books thing going soon. But the last 2 weeks were hell. As everyone knows, they were hell for everyone else. And I've been just doing other things. So I want to get this video out here, let you guys see what's going on. One day I'll get my links going, like I said. And yeah, thanks for watching. I've been Dave March, the Spy Guy.